after a few years, and I'm ready to show you what I did with the head of my father after we baked it. I had a few questions and I want to thank everyone for subscribing. The one question was, what clay did I use? It was a white earthenware clay, which potters use, so it's something that needs to be fired. So you can get it in brown, terracotta colors, black, white. I use both colors depending on what my mood is when I'm sculpting. When I had hollowed the head and finished it, I let it dry for about 2-3 weeks, and then I placed it in the kiln. At a very slow rate, I heated the kiln to 1096-97 degrees Celsius, which hardens the piece well without it shrinking too much. So I want to show you how to finish the piece with what we call a cold patina. A hot patina is usually used for bronze. In this case we don't use any heat, but we use a finish that is really true to the mark of the artist. Because I've already done the patina on my dad's head, we've decided we're going to use bronze lovely sculpture of her feet. There are lots of little crevices and details and wrinkles and lines, veins and ins and outs that show you how true this patina finish is to the mark of the artist. So you don't lose any detail, not a fingerprint, nothing. And the two basic ingredients we start with is shellac. Shellac looks like this when we buy it. It comes in flakes. It's made from a beetle. It's sort of the resin that a beetle, the shellac beetle, extrudes. And it's farmed and scraped off branches and trees and then cooked up and made into long sheets and then shattered into these crystals. You can get buttons and you can get crystals, and it's also used, it's edible, therefore it's used a lot in the food industry for candies, for making them shiny, and waxing oranges, preserving fruit, that kind of thing, and then very much used for furniture varnishes in the 1800s. In this case we're going to dissolve the shellac in some methylated spirits. I'm just going to show you. I've got a proper methylated spirits. In South Africa we have to use Shellac. There's a new brand, it doesn't work as well. Otherwise we need to find alcohol. I haven't tried it with alcohol, but I'll find out and let you know if it works. I'm going to pour a whole lot of this on. I'd say about 1/5 shellac to 4/5 meth, and it gets placed in a jar. I generally use a big jar like a coffee jar, something with a wide opening, and I let it sit overnight to dissolve. It gets syrupy, and if it gets too syrupy, you add a bit more shellac, or if it's just too runny after you've done this, you can also just let the methylated spirits evaporate a bit, but generally a 1:5 ratio is good. I've pre-prepared some shellac in here. This has been standing for days and days, and it's a nice consistency. It's dissolved, everything's dissolved. But I've also added some black oxide, which I get from any hardware store. It's used to color cements. It's cheap, and it comes in little bags like this. And I've added to my mix of, say, a yogurt cup full of the mix, I would say 2 tablespoons of color. I do this because the shellac is caramel colored. You get various colors. You get a sort of a caramel, which is your more precious shellac, your cleaner shellac, and it grades down to sort of a a deeper brown, reddish brown. And that color is not what you want as a base. What we're basically trying to do is to hide the clay in this instance and create a sealed surface onto which we can put our waxes, which are our coloring effects. So in order to create a nice dark background onto which we can layer the waxes, the shellac with a bit of oxide is my solution, and I want to show you next how we carefully stipple it on. There's a technique to it. You don't want to show brush strokes. You don't want anything to interfere with the integrity of the piece. All right, so we've got this beautiful sculpture. In order for me just to check that the consistency of the shellac is good, I always go onto the inside and just double check that the saturation of the color is good, that I've got enough color in here, and that looks good to me. We apply the color in a way that doesn't show marks and streaks. Once you get started, try not to get interrupted in the process. Give yourself a good hour or two to do this, but because you don't want to create edges by leaving them to dry and then starting a new line. It's hard to avoid, but just work consistently. And what we use is a stippling method. You get stippling brushes which you can use. In this case I've just got old oil paint brushes, anything that we're not using anymore for fine painting. It does create a mottled effect, that's all fine. The beauty of the methylated spirits mix is that your color, your varnish is deeply absorbed into the product, into the sculpture, and that means it also strengthens the object and creates a sort of sealed product for the wax to sit on top of, otherwise it would just absorb and absorb and absorb wax. So we're going to carry on doing this and we'll show you the progression shot as we go. At this stage, your sculpture has transformed into a black, quite ugly looking thing. Don't be bothered, it will come right. It can be a bit motley and that's okay. It's important that you don't take your brush and go over and over and over the shellac, because you'll create a bald patch where the shellac won't want to take again. Rather let the whole thing dry. In this case we had quite an intense mix of black to the shellac, so it covered it very well, and we don't want it too shiny, we want it to have this sort of matte finish. Once this is dry, we go into the second phase of the patina, and that is your wax coloring, and I'll show you the ingredients. You've got to decide at this stage what finish you want. You can achieve things like a cementy finish, a bronzy finish, a stone finish. You can go back to a terracotta finish even. There are lots of options, and I always say doing a patina is a little bit like cooking. Every sculpture has its own color. It takes on the patina differently. It reacts differently with the color, it responds to the color, and when I look at a sculpture I like to think, especially when it's a portrait, like what is the aura of that sculpture and where we're going. I'll show you some examples of colors that we can use and then how to do the finish. You can use the same brushes for the wax as for the shellac. In order to clean the shellac off your brush, you use clean meths, clean alcohol to wipe off. I don't like these things going near my basin, so I just pour a little bit into a container and rinse the brushes and let the rest evaporate, or put it in with the shellac. You'll always be adding a bit of this to the shellac. So there you have your brushes all nice and clean for the next phase. You'll find that when you're a sculptor, half your kitchen utensils end up in your studio. But in this case, I've stolen the potato masher. I want to show you how we prepare the next layer. Where we had shellac and methylated spirits, we now have wax. In South Africa, we get a product called Cobra wax. It's a floor polish. It comes in a tin like this. I generally mix up a tin at a time. It comes as a solid wax, and I take it out of the tin and I mix it with some turpentine in order to soften it, to make it into a liquid form. Again, I don't have a complete measure, about 1-to-1 mix of turps to the wax to start with. If you've got a little blender that you can use, also a kitchen utensil, you could use that to quickly blend it, but in this case this masher will do the trick. Just want to mix the turps with the wax. Sometimes the wax comes in different flavors like lavender and lemon. Don't worry about it, you can still buy it. The color doesn't affect the final finish. Okay, we're just going to keep blending this till it's a smooth mixture. Takes a little while. I tend to do my patinas outdoors because of the strong smell of the methylated spirits and the turps. I recommend that you do this outdoors. Also better to see the color in natural light. I then put this in a sealed container. Otherwise your turps is going to evaporate and you have a hardened wax again. I then want to talk about the colors. We've discussed this sculpture, and Ron wants a finish that looks a lot like bronze. I've changed over time. I used to use green and a little bit of brown, but now I find that blue gives us more of a bronze color. Well, there's greeny bronze, there's bluey bronze. So if we were to see this as a bronze, if this were a bronze, it would have come out very, very shiny, and then one would have heated it and created a dark finish and then put a wax on. So we're kind of emulating the stages of bronze. The bronze would be a lot browner though. In this case, we've got this black background. So this becomes your clear base mix. We're not going to put color into all of this. We're going to take a little bit out and put it back in here. For instance, any container that will hold turps. Just remember, some containers dissolve with turpentine. So we've got a little bit of wax here. Don't worry about the lumps. I've got a few colors here. These are colors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are colors you can get at any hardware store for cement stains. Then there are a few colors here that I did get from another supplier, in fact AMT, where we get our silicone rubbers and mold making materials. They have quite a nice selection of oxides now. And then I have ceramic colors for underglaze painting. They're quite expensive, so I don't use them as much. in the main body of the color, but I use them for picking up highlights. And of course here our range is endless. This is copper carbonate. It is a color we use, an oxide that we use in ceramics. Now that is actually the result of bronze oxidizing. So that is your true bronze turquoise that you find, or copper, you know, when copper oxidizes, it goes this beautiful turquoise. Unfortunately nowadays they don't grind it finely enough, and I find in the wax it doesn't dissolve enough and it tends to brush off when we're polishing. But it is a good guide as to what color we actually want. What we've decided is to use a little bit of the ceramic blue. You can get a blue with the cement oxides, but it's a bit roughly ground as well. So is the green. So therefore I'm choosing to go with the ceramic oxides. I'm going to put some in here. This is going to be our base color. And you'll see that once we've put that down and add a little bit of yellow, we'll get a green. So we're going to use this as our base to put all over. Start. Here we go. That's our base. We'll test it on the sculpture. We might have to add a bit more, but it's taking quite nicely. What happens, of course, is when it dries, it goes a bit lighter. So this is going to be your color. If you want to see how it dries, you know, you just compare it there. If you feel that you need a bit more blue, the reason we're going with the blue is because it can be turned into green easily with a bit of yellow. And we'll get this lovely turquoise color of the bronze. So again, you stipple and do it evenly. Again, you don't want brush marks that are left and that you have to polish out later. You want a nice even finish that doesn't distract from the sculpture and all the lovely marks. You can, in this case, go over a little bit, blend. What I tend to sometimes do is I'll put on my color, and then with another brush, a sort of a wider, looser brush, I tend to go over and stipple again or take away. This is taking away at the moment. It's a bit too wet. So when it's a bit drier, you can blend your colors. Because what we can do now, let me just finish doing everything in blue, and then I'll show you what happens if we put a bit of yellow with this. If you're not happy with the basic colors that you've got here and you want to mix colors, the other way to do it is to first do a dry mix. So say we need about 2 teaspoons of blue and we want to make the green to start with. I'd say this yellow is quite a strong yellow and I want quite a bluish green. I like to mix the colors when they dry. This way you can see the color as it, because the wax dries and then the color goes lighter. So if you mix your colors dry, you get a better impression of what the color is going to be. There's also this, these colors are a little bit clumpy, crummy, so to get rid of all those crumbs in this method is a good idea. You get a better color mix if you do this. So then you get your perfect turquoise, which we were looking for earlier. And then you mix that with the wax. color. And I'm going to work between the two. So we're going to blend the two colors. I tend to go for cooler colors. I generally find the blues, the greens, the turquoises, the yellows work better than the oranges and reds. It depends what you're trying to achieve. But these lovely, they can also double up as soapstone or lovely stones. I find what really is a nice form of reference for these finishes are observing lichen on rocks. Always keep your eyes open when you're in nature. There's some beautiful colors there that you might want to emulate. Here we go, blending these two colors together until the whole sculpture is covered. A bit of blue, a bit of turquoise. Making sure we get into all these little crevices. Okay. So here we are. We've applied the color to the whole piece, and you can see the transformation, what the color does for the piece. The magic happens when we polish. That's when these colors blend and a little bit of the underneath color is revealed, and the whole thing takes on a lovely shine. And if we wanted to, we could add a little bit of yellow, but I think for now this is a good start. I like doing this in stages where we polish one layer and then we see if there's anywhere where we want to highlight, bring in a bit of gold, or I sometimes bring in little metallic colors like graphite powder or copper powder to highlight certain areas. We're going to leave this to dry, generally a day or two, for up to a week. The drier the wax is, the quicker it shines up. I always say it's a lot like polishing a shoe. When you put on your wax, let it dry, let it harden, and it quickly buffs up. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you some examples of other colors we've put on other sculptures that will have a different effect, and we can see what they turn out like. Here are a couple of other variations of color wax. Here we've used yellow ochre to inside the wax, and this is now a week's worth of drying, so this is ready to polish. Here we've mixed a bit of blue and then stippled some yellow on. If the wax is completely dry, then the colors tend to stay and not blend too much, which is what you want. If you want them to blend more, you just put the sculpture in the sun a little bit, warm up the wax, or you start polishing a little sooner than a week. We're waiting for this to dry, and this is also a lovely color we've achieved. It reminds me a little bit of a Mediterranean sea. It's quite Grecian. This is a portrait that one of my students did of her husband, and he is Greek, so I love the fact that we've managed to achieve this Grecian bronze look. So really the world's your oyster when it comes to colors. I also like using cement as a color because it's got a specific color. It's not grey, it's got a bit of green in it, cement. And the only problem with cement is that it does react with the wax and can become a little bit hard. But it does work as a color. And just keep looking for pigments and powders wherever you go, in hardware stores, paint shops, and sort of ceramic supply shops have the biggest variety. In order to clean your wax brushes, you use a little bit of turps. I Don't want any of these chemicals near my water basin, because then the whole basin smells of terps. And so just a little dip into the terps, and you wipe your brushes with turpentine in this case. We've let this wax dry for a day, and we are now ready to polish it. You can leave it for as long as you like, actually, at this stage. I've got a shoe brush, good old-fashioned shoe brush, and it's clean and it's new. I've got some old pillowcases, old sheets, old duvet covers that are torn up. Make perfect buffing cloths. This is the third stage of the patina. I have some cornstarch here, good old-fashioned maizena, and open it, yeah. Then we'll put a bit of this in on our mixings. I love gathering old bits of perspex or old cutting boards for this purpose. We're going to put our yellow in because we feel that this is a little bit blue. And again, we're going to just mix it in. The proportion doesn't really matter. Because the cornstarch is purely a buffing agent, like a polishing agent. I'm going to pick a little bit up with our cloth and start polishing. Let's try something easy. So what I do like to do when I do this is actually sit somewhere comfortable in a chair and start polishing, so that I've got this thing in my arms, it's not wobbling all over the show, and I can start by just buffing this wax, bringing in a bit of the yellow. You see how that changes the color. And we're also just warming up the wax a little bit. Put on some music, sit in a comfortable chair, and keep polishing. This can take a while, but what you can see is that we've not lost any marks. Then we take our brush and we start polishing and buffing. And this is when the magic happens. All this blending of the colors comes together. And you start seeing a shine, a sort of waxy shine coming up. This is where you need a bit of elbow grease. And so you go. Once you have done all of this, which is a good hour or two of polishing, you can then still come back and say that you wish to add a bit more grey, a bit more black. I sometimes take a little bit of metallic powder, like a graphite powder, that just helps blend everything. If you find that the wax is very hard and it's not shifting, you can take a bit of the clean wax that you were applying before you put colour in, just to soften up the wax a bit and blend things more. But the rest of it really is just the effort of polishing. So 24 hours later, we've got a lovely syrupy solution of the shellac. It's nice and syrupy and gooey. I would add almost double methylated spirits to this in order to apply it, and my colorant, which is generally a black or a dark brown manganese type color for our base color and for applying the waxes later. Okay, so true to my word, I said if you polish for hours, your piece will come out quite polished and shiny, like a good military shoe. And you have to give it the elbow grease it needs. You can also choose not to go the shiny and not polish as much, but I think that with time, the shine does go a little bit, and it really, really brings out the color nicely. I think this is a fantastic example of how the patina can look a lot like bronze, and it's picked up all the details, nothing's lost. That's the nice thing about this finish. There's not a single mark lost, and everything's enhanced beautifully.